Hi, friends. We are here to dive into Sonia G's newly released new fundamental set. Her original fundamental set released back in December of 2017 and on July 18th. First of all, let me just start by saying a huge thank you to Sonia and Beautylish for sending me this set. When I received the email alert, I was grateful and just my emotions were swelling because I'm always thankful for an opportunity to receive a gift from her and Beautylish. And this set, when I laid my eyes upon it for the first time and saw the wood handles, I nearly lost it. Just an exquisitely beautifully designed set and homage to her first fundamental set that many of us were begging for her to restock. And she had explained on her blog, which if you haven't checked out already, I most certainly recommend that you do. With any Sonia G release, go over to sweetmakeuptemptations.com, and for the fundamental set 2.0 especially, Sonia lays out each and every detail about the brushes, the inspiration, the entire process that took place for this set to happen. So I will leave that link down in the description box below. I have my notes from the blog post just to make sure everything is correct, okay? The first part of the fundamental set are these 6 face brushes. 4 are re-editions from the original fundamentals set. 1 is a re-edition from the Kiyaki mini set, and a new design was added. I think you can tell the main difference are the wood handles. Sonia explained that the original wood handles, and this for example is the face 1, you have here the maple wood with the red to black lacquer, the Sonia G symbol on the bottom base of the handle, and it's quite large and wide. She realized perhaps not the most practical, and maybe a lot of us had also noted in tougher to pack, but the heaviness was there, and for self-use I think there was a purpose for that. But now the new fundamental set showcases this beautiful walnut, exposed walnut wood with the sloping silhouette design and the brushed matte finish on the ferrule. My gosh. We'll get into the comparisons between the older fundamental set designs, but something about this wood, the walnut wood we first saw, I believe, in her brush holder that Sonia said will be back in stock, I think, in a few months. But the process through which these wood handles go through is, tedious. The wood is polished with what's called tonoko powder. It's powdered stone, and what that does is to help accentuate the grain of the wood so it could just better show in this handle. And the tonoko powder also helps to mitigate shrinking and strengthens the wood, and that process in itself is labor intensive. So there are 2 different operations. You got the handle making and the brush making, and Sonia was able to give us insight for both parts of the behind the scenes for handles and the brush bundling. So that was quite interesting to learn about. And in terms of why Sonia didn't recreate a lot of the shapes in the fundamental set is because as she designed her Face Pro set and Sky Pro set for Face, that a lot of the functionality tasks were covered with these newer designs that didn't justify recreating or restocking many of the brushes from the fundamental set. But one of the main reasons was the fact that the same quality and the materials couldn't be acquired and the quality couldn't be replicated in the same manner. And I understand Sonia for making that decision, because when you have something that is top notch and you cannot recreate it, and the only other option, well, the 2 options is just not do it again or do it with a lesser quality, I applaud Sonia for sticking to her guns and just deciding we'll do something completely different with the same high quality, perhaps different materials, but still top tier. And like Sonia's original fundamental set, these brushes were to cover the essential tasks of your makeup routine, but also to fill in the portions that you thought were missing. Perhaps there was a product in your collection, a stubborn gelée bronzer or blush, or a hard press powder blush that you could not apply to your face, that you felt limited in the blend or the application. Sonia wanted to create designs that will allow you to use your entire makeup collection with as little hiccups as possible and just elevate your makeup application experience. Ever since since I started to use Japanese made brushes, specifically Sonia G brushes, everything has just become streamlined in my makeup routine. I now have become more knowledgeable and a little more savvy in terms of choosing the right brush for the right product and creating those relationships, so no matter what product I use, I know a brush to use it with, and the application and result is going to be wonderful. A couple of swap outs that Sonia had mentioned that are not necessarily in this fundamental set, but she had mentioned that the base one is replaced by the newly released sheer fusion buffer. I have a video covering the fusion sheer buffer at length, so if you want to head over, you could click on the card link above or the link down below. You can see here immediately the difference is the fact that the new fusion sheer buffer has a mixture of synthetic as well as undyed and dyed psycho goat, where base one I believe is just a mixture of synthetic and undyed psycho goat hairs, so you have a little more versatility here simply because of the brush density and brush length. So this replaced the base one. The phase one from the fundamental set was replaced by the Buffer Pro. In addition to the Face Pro series, you can see the main difference is how the handle is to slope, and you have the original wider handle from the Face one. And this brush is responsible for the buffing, okay? If you want that polished, smooth finish to your makeup, buff away. Sonia also added the Smooth Buffer, which is basically a smaller version of the Buffer Pro for more precise regions of your face that need a little more smoothing, like here on the cheekbones if I wanted a smoother finish to that highlight. This collection is available as a set, or brushes are sold individually. I'll have the prices down below in the timestamps, but if you would like to get the set, it does retail for $365. And if you just at the price, if it is your first time encountering Japanese made brushes, I'll go into more details when covering each brush, but the processes through which these brushes go through, I had already touched upon the handle process. That on its own is a whole other thing. The more time an artisan spends on the brush, the more expensive that brush will be, and a perfect example will be the fan brush. And that will lead us into the first brush of the Fundamental Set 2.0, the Fan L, which I assume means fan large, and replace the original Sculpt 1. Now you can see fan brushes are just beyond unique, especially if you haven't seen this type of brush before, but very much a staple in Japanese brush collections. And as you could probably assume, it takes a lot more work to create this fan shape with these bristles. The bristles this brush is made out of is Hakutotsuho goat bristles, as opposed to Psycho goat, because it was necessary for the brush's function so it can maintain that strength and that fluffiness. Okay, we need the fluff. What would you use a fan brush for? Well, if you already have the Sculpt 1, I'm sure you might have already used it with bronzer, which is what I use the new Fan L with here, with the Pat McGrath Labs Divine Bronzer in Bronze Divinity. This fan brush just allows a beautiful diffusing of color to the hollows, but it also blends the color out well in a soft fashion, right? In a way that you would like bronzer to appear on your skin. Or I'll speak for myself. I like bronzer to have that more diffused finish on my complexion, it not look as concentrated and sculpted like I would use a more contour powder for. And although it is a fan, it still has nice precision, right? The bristles are not too floppy. You could feel that there is some feedback and it's not stiff, but you feel confident applying bronzer in a way that you don't feel it will look haphazard afterwards. And because of the brush's size, I think it quite versatile to take it around your face, again, through the hollows, around the brows, around the top of your forehead, down the jawline. You can even place some bronzer down the bridge of your nose because the brush, I feel, is thin enough. There is some density there, but you could take it nicely here. Not a lot of product, but just enough for a touch of that bronze effect on the nose. There is another brush in this collection that I feel covers that task a little better, but if you just wanted to buy Fan L, then you could still do that. Just wanted to mention. Also, you could use Fan L for buffing, for setting. Setting will be great because of the wide surface area the brush delivers. You could get setting powder on fairly quickly, and it maneuvers well through the brows, around the brows. You could get it, yeah, a little under the eye. Might be a little big for that, but if you don't wear powder under your eyes anyway, maybe you just need to get on the majority of your face, and you could probably already tell. Fantastic for polishing and just getting that smooth blend when all has been applied. Next, we have the Fan M that replaces the Sculpt 2, and here we have dyed Psycho goat hair, and this was designed originally with harder to pick up blushes in mind, sheerer blushes, and an example Sonia gave on her blog was the Suku Pure Color Blush, which I use here in the shade Urushibi. It is a little hard pressed, and this is where Fan M comes in for the rescue because it picks up just enough but blends it smoothly on the cheeks here. I use it on the apple region of my face, and again, beautiful blend, great pickup from a harder to press powder like the Suku one. It could also be used to buff and polish, so if you would like a smaller fan brush, still has nice strength to the skin, really beautiful precision, but it's soft, right? Soft on the skin but not floppy. You could use it for your blush application or even bronzer. It will be a little more precise. I think you'll have to just be strategic with how you lay the brush on your face to get the right blend and application, but you most certainly could get away with some bronzer or even contour and buff it well when you get into the hollows of your cheeks. You could even get some nice highlight, which I would suspect we all have that hard pressed highlight in the collection. The powder highlight, gelée type, whatever, that you could use Fan A with, we'll get to in a minute. But if you wanted a softer application of color, maybe you have that highlight powder that needs a little bit of a tug from the pan. Fan M will be able to deliver that application for you. And again, because you can buy these brushes individually, if you feel Fan L is a little too big, I think Fan M will cover all the tasks that Fan L can do, but maybe a little more versatile because it is a smaller brush. And just something for you to consider if you like fans, but you're not too sure, you think Fan L is gonna be too much too soon, Fan M, you could consider. Next up, we have Fan A replacing Sculpt 4 from the original Fundamental set. And I love the original Sculpt 4 because this asymmetrical design, undyed Psycho goat hair with the short firm edge and the longer supple edge here that Sonia wrote, is a little dense for blush, but I use this with the Chanel eyeshadow and blush palette in Caractère. My French is terrible. My apologies. A blush formula that a lot of people were having problems picking up because they got hard pan, but now with this one, I think Fan A is a perfect example of what type of brush or what type of product this brush can truly shine with, is those harder to pick up gelée formulas, but because it is denser, maybe not great for a softer powder formula like the Gucci Matte Luminous blush that you'll see in action in a minute with another brush from this collection. Fantastic again for those harder to pick up formulas, but also I think appropriate for highlight, maybe that gelée highlight powder that's hard to pick up with your softer brushes. You can definitely pick it up with the Fan A, place it here on the cheekbones. Great if you needed more precision work down the bridge of your nose or here under your lip. And the asymmetrical design, I think fantastic and feels nice on the skin. It's soft but has beautiful precision on the blend. So again, if you have those products in your collection, those tight gelée products, that the fluffy soft cheek brushes that we all love, that we probably have in our collection, are just not doing us a favor, the Fan A will pick up that blush. And you can see on the B-roll, or you saw on the B-roll, how Fan A picked up those Chanel brushes, I mean, gorgeously. And the way the product blended on my skin, the end result looked smooth, poreless, soft focus, okay, all the things we want in a finished blend from our makeup. Next up, we have Classic Cheek. That is a re-edition from the Kiyaki mini set that was originally named the Classic Face. It is now called Classic Cheek here in the new Fundamental set, and you can see the difference in wood. The Kiyaki wood is a little more mahogany red leaning, and the walnut wood is a little more neutral brown leaning. I am thrilled that Sonia decided to have Classic Face in this collection because there's nothing better than a classic cheek brush, okay? Classic Cheek is spectacular. As you probably have already seen, it has a mixture of the undyed and dyed Psycho goat hair, but the length and density perfect. The bristles are long, but they're uniform in terms of how they blend on the skin. You get just enough splay, but because of the brush's fluidity, but also right density, I think it just helps lead the user into beautiful blush application, especially if one is not used to that, if they've had trouble in the past applying blush, or they couldn't find the right blush for their application, and it always ends up looking like a mess, a disaster. Okay, Classic Cheek, I think, just helps lead the user into feeling where the blush should go, how it should blend, and how the finished result should appear. And here I use Classic Cheek with Gucci's Luminous Matte Blush in Bright Coral. I also used it again with Pat McGrath's Bronze Divinity, just to get a little more concentration on the higher points of my cheek hollows, because you can use Classic Cheek for bronzing and for blush, right? If fan brushes aren't your thing, but you need that blush brush to cover as many cheek tasks as possible, definitely consider Classic Cheek. You could even use Classic Cheek on the cheekbones here for highlight. You just get highlight right here on the edge of the brush, and it lays it down perfectly, not in a haphazard manner or too much, just right. Especially if you are using a softer highlighter powder, this will pick it up quite nicely. And Classic Cheek for me kind of reminds me of the functionality of Jumbo Bronzer. Jumbo Bronzer is a great brush because it's fluffy, it's big, but it has such lovely uniformity and fluidity on the skin. Like, the brush doesn't just splay out of control and you don't feel its route on the skin, right? It kind of like stays together as like a school of fish. And this is what I feel Classic Cheek does. You have really nice splay and density, but it doesn't get out of control. And again, there's wonderful feedback from the brush. You can feel the product on your skin, you can feel where it's going, but at the same time you just have that fluff and airiness about it that I think is so hard to achieve, but Sonia just manages to do it. And the artisans, my gosh, the way you have to bundle these bristles to yield that experience and those results, I can't even. Fantastic for setting, as you probably have already assumed. Again, if you love to get a nice buff on as well, not only can you get the bronzer and blush on, some highlight, you wipe off your microfiber towel or whatever you're using, even a tissue, get in the setting or just get in the polishing and buffing, and you're ready to go. So from all the brushes we've covered so far, maybe Classic Cheek will be the most versatile out of all 6. If you're like, I just need one, all right, Missy, I'm on a budget, Classic Cheek is the way to go. I mean, it's beautiful. It covers so many tasks, from buffing, setting, highlight, blush, bronzer. It's all there. It's medium size, so yes, if you have a larger face and you're setting, it might take you a little long, but you got nice splay and movement where I think you'd be setting in no time. So that was just my 2 cents. Next, we have our soft buffer that replaced the original Phase 2, and this brush is made with undyed Psycho Goat. Same exact brush as was in Phase 2, just a different handle. Soft buffer is giving you density with movement, and perhaps this is a better example, like an equivalent experience to the Jumbo Bronzer. I would say Classic Cheek, yes, maybe, but for Smooth Buffer, you just have this uniformity and this dome shape, right? So it stays in contact with your skin in that way, a wider surface area at once, and I think this is fantastic if you need a little more pickup, perhaps from those harder pressed pan blushes or bronzers, like I had mentioned about the Suku. Reading my notes here, this is great if you have sensitive skin, right? Because Sonia considered those skin types that may not have liked the buffer or original Phase 1. If they felt this was a little too rough, soft buffer is going to give you that buffing experience, but like cloud-like. Okay, and Sonia had outlined the main differences between the, I believe 3 in all, the Buffer Pro and the Smooth Buffer, right? So this is the smaller out of all the 2. The Buffer Pro is going to give you a more robust polishing because you have more bristles, a wider flat top, wider surface area. The Smooth Buffer, same exact shape as the Buffer Pro, but a little more precise on the portions of your face where you want that buffing to occur, not on the larger areas. And then comes in Soft Buffer, where you want that buff, buff word 10 times, but you also want that smooth blush application, definitely more precise for bronzer. 100%. If you were to just buy this brush, however, you can get a diffuse finish. All you need to do, lock in that application and then whip it around the edges, and it will definitely blow out for sure to get that more diffused finish if you are using bronzer or just want that look on the complexion. Taking it around the forehead, you could take the edge of your brush down the bridge of your nose, under the lip, definitely down the jawline, and great for contouring your neck if you're into that. The collarbones, the brush is small enough 100% to make those tasks happen. And compared to classic cheek, the main difference is that you're gonna get more movement from classic cheek. Soft buffer is going to be a little tighter, a little more dense, but still soft. So if you want a little more splay and movement from your brush, classic cheek. If you want a little more tightness and also a little more pickup strength, soft buffer. And lastly, we have what is perhaps one of my most favorite, oh my gosh, I don't know what it is about small brushes. We have here Worker L, a new brush that has been added to Fundamental Set 2.0. This little brush is responsible for those smaller buffing tasks on your face that the other brushes cannot cover because they're far too large. I use this with my Hourglass powder to set my concealer under the eyes. I also use this to apply bronze Divinity, not only down the bridge of my nose, but also through the eye socket, just to have that beautiful blown out effect. If you don't want it to be so tight into the eye crease, but you need something more diffuse, Worker L. My goodness. Worker L reminded me of a much bigger Crease Pro. So this is the Blender Pro, excuse me, from her original Eye Pro set. You can see that there are similarities in terms of the shape. And Sonia had mentioned that the Worker L kind of resembles Detail Pro, and she feels that you cannot justify the purchase of Worker L if you have Detail Pro. The main difference you can see is that Detail Pro is smaller, more airy, not as dense. Worker L is a little bigger and a little denser. And I think great if you just need more robust buffing on your face. Like here, this part of my face gets so overly made up when I'm not careful, and this little brush is perfect just to polish that region between the brows, around the brows, just to get on the tip of the nose if you love to apply highlight there. Worker L. Down the bridge here, side to side, it will cut deep under the jawline, and you could use this with blush. You could. I will recommend that you use something that moves around the skin well, because it's going to because it's going to be concentrated. It's a smaller brush and is on the denser side, so just beware. I think fantastic if you love to wear blush through the eye crease, right? And it will then have more of that blown out effect. And naturally, as you probably have already seen on the demo, I use Worker L to apply highlighter on the cheekbones. And sometimes it's nice to apply highlighter on the tip of the brush that's small enough, and you can apply the highlighter powder in a circular fashion that I think yields a smoother result, right? As opposed to tapping on. If you're using one of the fan brushes, you can sweep up and down, side to side, but I think sometimes, depending on the formula, for sure, when you can apply it in a circular fashion like this, I think that just allows a little more versatility where you could hit the brow bone, and because the brush is this size, it won't disrupt any brow work you have already done prior. Again, you can move it around the smaller regions of your face without fear of disturbing anything that has already been put, right? That's where the Worker L comes in. And that brings us to the end of the entire Fundamental Set, the face portion of it, where we are waiting with bated breath until Sonia releases the eye designs. But my gosh, when I use these brushes, it was one of those things where I just wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised that these brushes would deliver, but one of the characteristics that I appreciate about Sonia's designs is just the thoughtfulness that goes behind these releases, and how Sonia makes sure that she tries to cover all the bases, which, you know, the essential tasks in makeup application, which I think also, I don't know, you could tell me down below, but with her knowledge, the different aspects of makeup application, it definitely has made my experience more refined, and I'm just more informed with different products to use and which brushes to use with. And it also forced me to take better care of my brushes, to respect the tool. Let me tell you, when I first started, or I know some people, this used to be me, guilty, you would throw your brushes in with your makeup. Everything was in the same bag. Bristles were knocked around, just tattered and tortured, and you didn't wash them as you have should. So, and makeup application was okay. It was hit or miss for me. I was living on the edge because I didn't know how it will turn out since the brushes were subpar. But now knowing how to take care of my tools, respecting them, okay, cleaning them when appropriate depending on the bristle type, and storing them properly, whether they're in home or when I'm traveling, my goodness, my makeup application just has elevated to a level that I did not see at the beginning. And here we are with better blending, smooth, polished looking skin, and also just steps to the makeup routine that I didn't know existed or didn't have as much significance to me at the time. The buffing and the polishing step, right? I just applied stuff and there I went. But taking the time to make sure your highlighter, bronzer, blush and setting powder and everything looks smooth and seamless on the skin when all has been applied, taking that time to just whip around a brush appropriate for that task made a world of a difference. And despite how many brushes that I have, especially the ones that I've been gifted also from Fude Beauty, anytime I use a Sonia brush, it's on lock. Like, I'm good to go. I think these are great to start a beginner with, since the tools and designs are intuitive, they kind of hold your hand, and they also encourage you to explore. If you haven't used a fan brush or you're curious about it, you don't know how it's going to go, I think this is a great opportunity. So if you are on a budget and you're like, listen, I'm not buying the entire set, I can buy two, I think a great way to go will be to buy the Fan M and the Classic Cheek, because you have the Fan M that can still apply your bronzer, that can still apply your brush highlighter, you could polish, set, and buff, but you also have Classic Cheek if you want a more diffuse application of bronzer, but can cover all those other tasks as well. You got the dyed and undyed Psycho goat hair, you got the dyed Psycho goat hair, you got a fan shape, and you have a more traditional shape, and you're good to go. You know what I mean? You could still use this for under eye powder if you want it. Yes, it's a little big, but maybe you already have a smaller teardrop shape brush that resembles the Worker L, and you already are good with that task, and you wanted, again, something different from your collection. Those will be the two that I recommend. If you were to just buy one, good luck. Definitely get a fan brush. Get one. I'll say the Fan A because I feel we all have that stubborn type of bronzer, blush, or highlight that's hard to pick up from the pan, and this will be the brush to help you cover that gap. So I'm just thinking from that perspective. If you don't have any hard pressed blushes, then you could probably just stick to the Fan M. The reason I'm not suggesting Fan L because it's not as versatile, simply because of the size, right? But this will be great still for bronzing, for setting, for polishing, fantastic for buffing. The way it will just get quick around the complexion in no time. So those are my suggestions. Hopefully the B-roll helped and you just seeing the brushes in action. And again, a huge thank you to Sonia and Beautylish for sending me the set. I cannot wait to see the eye brushes, so stay tuned for that, friends. Let me know if you've already purchased, whether it be the entire set, a few brushes, or one or none. Maybe you're good. Maybe you have all the Sonia brushes like I do, and as much as you think this fundamental set is beautiful, you're keeping it on hold or just admiring from afar. I totally understand. With all that said, I would love to know what you think down below, and I will see you down in those comments. And until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you in here again with another review tutorial, Sonia G extravaganza. I'll definitely be back on when her fundamental eye set releases, so stay tuned for that. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.